Good afternoon. Welcome all from me as well. Today I'll be telling you about the Center for Rare Diseases and the Register of Rare Diseases. Why do we need them? For both of these efforts, I've often been asked, Katrin, why are you doing all of this? In this presentation, I don't have any conflict of interest. It's, however, important to note that the activities of the Rare Disease Competence Center has partly been funded by the Tartu University Hospital Children's Foundation, partly funded from my research grant from the Estonian Research Council, and the activities are connected to the Jardin and Erdera projects as well. Our salaries are from these grants. Let's look at the center. When was it created and why? The center's age currently is roughly 4.5 years. Sirje Utenberg called me and said, Katrin, it is time to create a competence center. We can't manage the situation anymore. We don't have the competence to support everybody who is seeing us for the rare diseases. And in November 2021, the center was founded. The Children's Foundation was a lot of help in the creation of the center. They founded the position of the social work coordinator. They founded our website as well as psychological support service. Here's our team. Whether big or small is up to debate. Most of us are present. Salaried are me and Dr. Kristi Tael, Kaia Liiv, nursing coordinator, as well as the social work coordinator, Andra Adusoo. Her position has been funded by the Children's Foundation to this point. And we have 3 foundations, Dr. Kristi Rähne, Siiri Sarv and Margit Nõukas by the Jardin and Erdera project, and Associate Physician Ellis Rindars-Hurt, who presented previously about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Let's come back to the question why we need a rare disease center. Estonia has a great medical system. We have top-notch hospitals and family doctors. Why do we need a special center? Why do I have to create and fund it? I'd like to point to 3 main reasons. That the smoother treatment journey for the patient and the facilitation of a multidisciplinary approach. Previously, we mentioned the situation of patients claimed by no doctor. We can make a plan for the best care the person could be receiving. For some people, 4.5 years ago, we took the risk of creating a form on our website where people themselves can contact us. They can describe their problem briefly. Their contact will be registered and we can follow up asking for additional consent to view the patient's personal health information and either the clinical geneticist appointment or to see Dr. Eve Õiglane-Schlik at the Children's Hospital. We have left nobody without help when they have submitted a request. This scheme plays the treatment journey as the patient contact center. We review cases on a weekly basis, but I've noted the initial period as 2 weeks at times due to occasional vacation times. Our nursing coordinator requests the patient's consent for handling their delicate health data. The coordinator creates a summary of the situation. We discuss the patient at our weekly meeting and decide where to direct them.
nii-öelda CETA juhtumid, kus oleks vaja kiiresti ravi pakkuda, me käsitleme kiiremini. Ja seejärel toimub siis
In urgent cases, specialist's appointment will be made in 1 week, otherwise as schedule permits. The specialist's appointment is 1 hour long. This is longer than a regular appointment, but for these situations, less won't be enough. After the specialist's appointment, we discuss the case in a consilium. The Health Insurance Fund has 2 coding codes that apply to these consilia, to these meetings. Then we refer the patient to further specialists covering all their needs. This is currently convenient due to the possibility of e-consultations. And we also offer counseling by psychologists and social workers, especially if the situation is new and quickly developing. And ultimately, we create a summary, just like any case history. As Tuuli said, we try to note down all the needs the patient has, because oftentimes the patient will go on to establish an official disability. The overall timeline is approximately 6 months. It can be less, it can be more, depending on the case. Here you see the last year data. When we started out, when we accepted any contacts initiated to us, we were concerned that we might not be able to handle all contacts. Map Estonia gives an overview of the geographic dispersion of the patients. Looking back to the 4.5 years, roughly 1/3 of the patients have come due to the contact by the parent. Roughly 1/3 we have been contacted by the treating physician, and roughly 1/3 by adults. And frequent reasons are requesting counseling or further referrals. In an online era, it is important to have our information freely accessible online and on social media. We started out by creating a website. This is its front page. Its maintenance is the duty of our ERDERA coordinator. We put information on cross-border assistance as well. As about the European reference networks, we have a short summary of 24 European reference networks, along with the names of the responsible physician and the hospitals involved in the networks. Our Tartu University Hospital is in 19 networks, but 3 Tallinn-based hospitals are involved in a few. On our website, the names handling the references for cross-border international appointments can be found. ERDERA, through the ERDERA project, also there is information in other languages for patients to come to us from other countries. The movement by Estonian patients going abroad and vice versa. It goes both ways. There are families from outside of Estonia who have come to us for a faster diagnosis process. And thirdly, importantly, collaboration with patients and patients' organizations and dissemination of information in Estonian. The output is info sheets. These are needs-based. These are created as need arises. And everybody present, please let us know if there is an info page missing. We can create roughly 50 per year, and treating physicians have been instrumental in preparing the info sheets. The idea is for people not fluent in foreign languages to have an overview, to give to their family doctor, to their treating physician, to any medical staff working with them or their family. And these are the info sheets that Mia referred to, that she found. We have also created a Facebook group. It's named Rare and Complex Diseases in Estonia. It's created in the framework of the ERDERA project. The name was selected to make sense to potential patients, and any news are shared here. Information about new info sheets is posted here as well, and everybody is welcome to join and suggest for additions or material to be published on the page. As for the Rare Disease Day, the organization of the Rare Disease Conference, it has been our goal to offer as much information as possible about the availability of drugs, about our patients, and to disseminate this info to as many people as possible. Moving on to the second question, why do we need a rare disease register or database? This is another question I've heard a lot. Why are you doing this? What's it good for? Some have called it forgotten known person private project, and I've tried to explain that this is not my private project and to explain why we are creating it. The first benefit is a smoother journey treatment for the patient and more availability of assistance. The register will turn 3 this April. There is one document per individual. It's attached to the electronic case history. The first stage is similar to our oncological registry that some doctors may be familiar with. There's an analogous notification about a rare disease patient. There's a green note attached after this to the patient's e-history. And as of January this year, there's 4,500 such rare disease patient entries. In the e-health case history, there is a page for the rare disease about the approved diagnosis. We can reflect results of analysis here. When Eve showed us the results given to Franca's mother, this would appear here as well. We hope to soon be able to get a plugin for the OFA codes. And this document should soon automatically be moved to another patient history intake. The patient's case history gets a green sign, green flagging that it's a patient with a rare disease. In situations where medical professionals are not familiar with their situation, their online health history will immediately display their rare condition. So they wouldn't have to explain the situation, particularly if they're unconscious or otherwise in a vulnerable situation. Before I talk about the other two benefit categories, let's look at the proportion of patients currently reflected in the registry. On the left, the age distribution. The claim that rare disease is only affect children is a myth. It also affects adults. In the registry, there are slightly more women than men, but I'll explain why soon after. This is a table with the most frequent ORFA codes in our rare disease registry as of now. The most frequent one is hereditary breast and/or ovarian cancer. Since this is prevalent in women, this affects the gender distribution of our patients. And the column to the right names the specialists handling these diseases. The second is neurofibromatosis, the third is Lynch syndrome, then Marfan syndrome, then kidney disease, then hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos we spoke about today. We have fewer people on the registry than the Ehlers-Danlos Association has members. Then some hematological diseases follow, then phenylketonuria, and so on and so forth. As a specialist physician, most of the diseases I see here are the ones reflected in medical textbooks. Rare diseases common in Europe. Secondly, there are ultra-rare diseases, ORFA codes. The most frequent reflects patients with rare disorders without a determined diagnosis. There are 15 such cases. Next up, rare non-syndromic intellectual disability, then rare genetic epilepsy. But coming back to the top code, it is emphasized on the EU level that if we collectively decide that a person has a rare disease, then even though diagnosing it has not been successful, we should still improve the person's treatment journey as well as their ability to formally get recognized as a disabled person. Next up, a benefit of the registry, better planning. The better planning of health services. For instance, how widespread are congenital aortic aneurysms in Europe? Listed here are 5 conditions and their distribution per year. And the existence of such information helps us plan the need for this type of cardiovascular surgeries. It helps us plan for the requirement of specialists in Estonia, especially considering the small number of our population. And the third benefit is distribution of information on the frequency of rare diseases and on the clinical and tests of new medications.
See on kolmas punkt. Ja siis seesama, need mõned näited sellest, mida me oleme
Examples. There are some examples we've used so far. There's a new ultra-rare disease law currently being drafted, and it will allow us to disseminate information better. First example, for achondroplasia, there's the orphan drug Voxzogo. The Health Insurance Fund asked us how many children live with this disease in Estonia. We were able to respond there were 6, whereas the rest of the cases had been diagnosed in utero, which has also decreased the number of children living with this condition. The second example is epidermolysis bullosa. There's an orphan drug, Vyjuvek. To our knowledge, there is only one child in Estonia with a severe subcategory of this disorder. We will discuss this case later. Unfortunately, some others with this severe syndrome have passed away. We have also received numerous queries that we have been registering systematically. Within the last year, we have received 20 queries from pharmaceutical manufacturers or medical specialists looking for information for specific hereditary diseases or disease groups. For instance, Orion Pharma asked about the number of children with CDKL5 shortage syndrome in underage patients. MedPace Estonia asked about the generalized myasthenia gravis and homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, and Ecovia asked about the number of renal diseases. Obviously, we don't hand out confidential information, but we help with the info we are able to grant. We make contact between the company and the relevant people as necessary. And we see a lot of benefit here, where people who could be helped through clinical trials would have the information they need about them. And this is where I finish my presentation. I would like to thank our Rare Disease Collective, the physicians, the parents, and the IT department helping us with worksheet. One quick question. What's the main benefit for the patient when their rare disease has been noted in the registry? The main benefit is when the patient ends up in a different medical institution in a bad state. Then instead of going through an extremely long case history, this information is immediately available. Thank you very much, Professor Katrin Õun.